Yo, I'm back with another PancreasNoWork reaction. This video was a request by someone. I think this is the continuation of the Wizards Mages of Fantasy. The video is titled, forgive me, Winds of Magic. As always, before we start, original video is pinned down below in the description. Please support the original creator, and without making this video longer, let's begin.
The wind is something that's oftentimes portrayed as significant in fiction. Omens come and go with the wind, and the general idea
Also, grab your drinks, guys.
of the winds of fate dictating destiny is hardly an uncommon thing to see. Even in real life, there are moments when the wind is significant as well. Hunting is the easiest example. If you're downwind, then an animal with a good sense of smell will have a harder time detecting your presence.
Never hunted in real life, actually, but I have friends who did, and they always bitch about the wind.
Warhammer is no exception, and to wizards even more so. A celestial wizard can use the wind as a weapon, which may not sound impressive until a light breeze suddenly
Unless fishing is considered hunting, then I'm a fisherman.
turns into a hurricane. More importantly are the winds of magic themselves, blowing across the world of Warhammer fantasy and influencing the entire planet. When the winds are lax, or on the rare occasions they're absent, things are calm and normal. When they blow strongly, however, mages will get a significant boost in their power, and the more supernatural enemies of Warhammer will find even their non-magical abilities bolstered to even more superhuman levels.
Ooh.
Though not everyone is a wizard, everyone in the setting must take into account the winds of magic when planning anything significant. From the lowliest of mages to kings and emperors, the winds are a constant presence. So today, we talk about the best kind of wind, the wind that lets you cast Fireball. From fantasy to even a
This sounds so weird, the wind to cast Fireball. I don't really get how they're related, but
little bit of Age of Sigmar, we'll talk about the 8 winds and what they can let your psychotic murder hobo of a fantasy roleplay character do if you're inclined to the magical arts. On the topic of Warhammer, though, it is a miniatures wargame, and we all know you can never have enough minis. So if you'd like to grab some phenomenal minis for your army, then I've got just the thing. Minimaker, this video's sponsor. Minimaker is a 3D printing miniature company that makes resin miniatures suited to all your
how many sponsors does he have? They all different every video. That's crazy.
First off is their quality. Minimaker makes not only
Land Rider.
miniatures, but 3 different levels of it depending on what you want. If you want to use these minis for your tabletop army, you can get a quality for that. They're tough and elastic.
They look
So
nice.
if you drop them, then there's no need to worry about them breaking. If you want them to instead be perfect display pieces, there's a quality for that. And if you still want high quality minis but don't want to spend too much, fear not. There's a quality option for that too. All of them, mind you, look fantastic. I've got some right here to show you, and by God are they great. Elves riding dinosaurs, fellas. It's a dream that with Minimaker has finally come true. Speaking of, the price. Since Minimaker's prices are based on production costs, they aren't charging you an arm and a leg for your minis. Something like that is amazing to see, and your wallet will certainly thank you for it.
Does Games Workshop like that we're like these companies that make their stuff, or it don't matter?
They're also incredibly accessible, not only shipping worldwide, but also making everything to order. Your minis will be ready to go within 2 to 10 business days, and because they're made to order, there's absolutely no need to worry about availability or items being sold out. And perhaps best of all is how open they are as a company. If you have any questions, you can reach out. If you have suggestions for a change to be made or something to be added to the store, just ask and they'll almost certainly end up implementing it. You can ask for new minis to be added, and they will do it. That's insane. And with the loyalty program, anytime you buy from them, you get 1 point per euro spent. Get enough points, you can buy something with points. Since every product can be bought with points instead of money, that means these already inexpensive minis can be gotten for free after enough purchases. So what are you waiting for? Use my link in the description and pinned comment to check out Minimaker today. Aside from getting yourself some phenomenal minis at already great prices, you can get yourself 10% off the order. So head on over now and order yourself some of the finest
The
miniatures.
prices seem very reasonable,
Now then,
actually.
time to talk about the worst inclement weather imaginable.
Yep.
The most important thing to know about the winds of magic is that similar to how Psyker powers in 40k originate from the warp, so too does magic flow from the realm of chaos. As a result of the 2 portal warp gates of the old ones that collapsed into chaos rifts, magic flows out from them into the rest of the world. It can also flow into the world from smaller warp rifts, but those are of course much more temporary things. When it comes into the world and coalesces, it ceases to be purely chaotic energy, but instead turns into dark magic. As the name implies, this is still evil and whack magic that mortal man should not mess with, but it isn't 100% chaotic in nature. It's a very slippery slope, and chaos can use dark magic easily, but by that same token, creatures anathema to chaos like the undead can also freely use dark magic without instantly turning into a Lord of Change.
Yep.
It's always bad vibes, but it's not always chaotic vibes. I have to imagine a lot of dark magic users being evil, aside from the inherent potential for corruption, has to do with the kind of
But who decided that dark magic is evil, though?
person who wants to use dark magic. Little Timmy the newly awakened wizard or Mother Agatha the Shallian priestess probably don't want anything to do with dark magic, while Lord Von Stabbythroat the Vampire King is probably going to be more interested. Not long after it enters the mortal world, this dark magic then splits into 8 different winds. They are in no particular order: celestial, light, shadow, death, fire, beasts, life, and metal. Each of them has a color assigned to them, and each of them are by this point
Shadow is my gang. Stand up.
significantly less tainted to use. A newly awakened bright wizard attempting to cast Fireball is in all honesty more likely to burn themselves alive than they are to spontaneously turn into a chaos spawn.
Yeah.
Both of these things are possible, as all magic does still carry some chaos
So they also can turn to chaos spawns, basically, like in 40k.
influence, but once the magic is separated into one of the winds, it's far easier to control than dark magic. Depending on the faction in question, this is either the endpoint of magic or the stepping stone to make it purer than even this. A select few, chiefly the High Elves and Lizardmen, are capable of knitting the winds of magic back together into one combined wind. Rather than it being dark magic, however, this is known as Quiet, or High Magic. Even the High Elves, who being elves are naturally great wizards, rarely perform this kind of magic. It requires intimate knowledge of how each lore of magic works to weave it back together, but in the lore at least, this results in what is either the most powerful form of magic, or the second most powerful behind Dar, with the benefit of not potentially falling to chaos and corruption if you try and cast it.
So, okay, so as I understand, the lizardmen and elves can, if they want to, I guess, can do. But are there any, like, humans who achieved such status, or none really?
It's also worth noting that you don't have to go all the way with combining all 8 lores of magic. The Cathayan Yin and Yang magic lores each involve taking half the existing winds and combining them into one. Not as powerful, but certainly a lot easier to do. Normal humanity, meanwhile, cannot create high magic. While the old ones did create humanity with the ability to become fairly proficient at magic, they have neither the inherent skill nor long enough lives to become as good as it as the elves are. For the most part, they can't even combine 2 of the winds of magic. All it does is turn into dark magic and either spectacularly backfire on the caster in question, or is the end result of someone wanting to become a necromancer or generally evil person. While those yin and yang lores do exist, they are to my knowledge entirely practiced either by the immortal dragon rulers of Cathay or the children they've had with humans. Either way, their very blood and nature is giving them protection and the possibility to combine the winds of magic. I imagine that if some random Cathayan peasant tried to cast yin or yang magic, they'd promptly blow up. Instead, for the longest of time, mankind was barely even able to use one wind of magic. Hedge mages and witches dotted the land, and any magical use was seen as heretical and mages inherently evil. To be as fair as possible, even though this is superstitious and mostly wrong, there is some base to it. Untrained mages in fantasy pose much of the same dangers as untrained psychers in 40k, if to a slightly lesser extent. Wizards without proper training can cause great harm to themselves and those around them, and combined with the less logical hatred of anything that has to do with magic, meant human wizards had little training for thousands of years.
But that's why they created the schools, I guess, to help them, yeah, and keep them in check.
This attitude in turn ensured all wizards were untrained and therefore rather dangerous to be around, creating a feedback loop of fear of magic. The alliance with the dwarfs also didn't help, since dwarfs view all non-rune magic as that weird crap elves do, and therefore inherently bad. And though most wizards are born with an innate draw to one wind of magic or the other, it didn't matter which one they were drawn to. All of it, even magic that mankind would one day learn is inherently harmful to chaos if properly harnessed, was heretical. Then one day, Teclis came to the reigning Emperor of Man, a man named Magnus the Pious, with a question.
Magnus also.
Have you heard of the High Elves? Teaching humans how to properly harness magic, Teclis and Magnus set up the colleges of magic so that mankind could fully realize its own magical potential. Instead of hedge mages randomly casting whatever's instinctual to them, now they would each focus on a single wind of magic that naturally called to them. Though unable to learn it all, human mages who spent their entire lives studying a singular wind could in theory rival their elven counterparts in a singular wind as
Oh, damn.
well, if still unable to master them all, or Quaish magic. Something to note about the winds of magic before we get into the specifics is that though certain winds may flow stronger than others in certain places, all of them can still usually be seen, if only a little bit. Additionally, the colors that each wind of magic is associated with weren't just picked because they thematically matched up. Someone attuned to the lore of fire will see it as orange-red. Those colors are actually real. The specifics of how they appear to the individual may change based on the beliefs and cultures of the magician in question, but the wind of shadows will always be gray, the wind of life green, fire red, and so on. As the mage grows more powerful and experienced, they can even eventually see the other winds of magic, proving both that the winds are ever present and that the colors are real. There are yet a few more things that are also important to go over, but
I like that there's an explanation that it's not like random, it's, you know, they see
for
it.
the specifics. One is the vortex at the center of Ulthuan. See, in day-to-day life in the Warhammer world, magic has the potential to be very prevalent, but rarely overwhelmingly so. The winds of magic change whenever the colleges of magic get a new patriarch, and that doesn't ruin everyday life in Altdorf. That's because of the vortex draining magic from the world. If it weren't for the vortex, magic would be much more prevalent in the demons are everywhere, please God make it stop kind of way. So give the elves and lizardmen thanks if your old world army is everyone but them. They're the reason demons aren't an everyday hazard for you. Ignore that if you play either Warriors of Chaos or Yvresse though. If you play Chaos, then demons are good, and if you play Yvresse and High Elves, demons are in fact an everyday hazard. And even with the vortex, the winds of magic can still wax and wane in certain places. This mostly affects wizards, since though normal people can feel changes of the winds of magic through effects they have on the world around them, a wizard is the one who can quantify the change and properly explain what's going to happen. A place where the winds of magic blow weakly are the closest you'll ever get to a mundane place in Warhammer. Supernatural occurrences of any type will be rarer than they'd otherwise be, and wizards will find themselves less able to cast spells. If they blow more strongly in an area, any more prevalent winds in an area will much more visibly affect the land. If a place usually has a high concentration of shadow magic, the land might become darker than normal. If it normally has a high amount of life magic, the greenery will look brighter than ever, and farming harvests are going to be amazing. And of course, regardless of the prevalent winds, wizards are going to directly increase or decrease in power based on the overall wind. If the winds are weak, a Lore of Death wizard might not even be able to hurt you. If the winds are strong, then what's supposed to only kill one guy might instead cause an entire postal code to drop dead. Stronger doesn't always mean better, or at the very least, sometimes stronger isn't worth the collateral damage.
I just wonder, is there a way, is there a way to control the winds, like, or it's completely like also random?
The last thing to take note of is the Wheel of Magic, also known as Paranoth's Wheel for the dude who invented it. Codifying the 8 winds of magic into their colors and whatnot, it is a nice and simple way to see all 8 winds at once. Physically see them anyway, since by itself this is just a picture of all 8 winds on it. It did also have purpose built into it, but ever since it was made, pretty much every one of the theories behind those purposes were debunked. For instance, Paranoth thought that certain winds were stronger and weaker against others, and placed them accordingly. This is not true, as almost 2 centuries of testing has proven. Even life and death magic, though certainly opposites, don't necessarily have a rock, paper, scissors kind of deal going on. You also notice that jade magic, the green one, is at the top. The reason for this is almost certainly Paranoth was a Jade Wizard and thought Jade magic was the best. A third purpose, unintentional this time, but
very egotistical,
more true than the rest of them, is that all the different symbols for each Wind of Magic school come together to form an 8-pointed star. No wizard would ever admit to it, but remember that magic does come from the realm of chaos and carries inherent risk with it. Looks like old Paranoth stumbled into quite the bit of in-universe social commentary there, didn't he? The rest of the video will be more about the winds specifically rather than the college, both to keep things on topic and because I've got to justify more videos to make you watch now, don't I? So that being said, let's get into the lores proper now.
Celestial magic.
Celestial magic is one of the winds I'd say most people are familiar with outside of people specifically into Warhammer Fantasy. This is really just my assumption, but given how prominently the wind has featured in Total Warhammer trailers, I'd reckon there's a decent chance someone has seen a Celestial mage and not known that.
I am very clueless.
Specifically what they were. The Wind of the Heavens, also known as the Wind of Azir, the Blue Wind, and of course Celestial magic, is one of the most important ones in all of Warhammer. It blankets the very atmosphere of the world, and its users can gaze upon the stars and divine the future from them. It's honestly not even that difficult if you're a relatively experienced Azir mage. In one of the Total Warhammer 3 trailers, some Celestial wizards are gazing at the heavens and learning about an upcoming conflict. In Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, casting a spell that lets you learn a bit about the future is also one of the lower costing spells to perform. Reading the future ain't that hard, turns out, though doing so precisely does take some more work, I'll admit. Aside from being incredibly powerful in the long term due to these abilities, they're also some of the best combatants around. Heavens is more of a loose term. If you wanted to be simplistic, if crude, you could get away with calling this the lore of Up, as in look up at the sky because I'm about to drop a comet on your head. Wind is the most simplistic of offensive abilities they have, but a concentrated blast of tornado-forced wind can rip apart formations of weaker units with ease. Moving up the spells, they can blast a bolt of lightning on top of you, if not casting chain lightning to delete entire regiments. And of course, there's the Comet of Cassandora. It's just a big rock they yank on top of your skull. In spite of being magical, obviously, Azir is also a highly mathematical kind of magic. After all, what is charting the course of the stars if not mathematical in nature? Knowing how to predict the future being related to math makes sense because of this. The specifics are of course subject to change as all things magical, but a great—
Okay, in the first video I don't think he mentioned that they can see future, and maybe this college makes them even more OP.
deal of the practices of celestial wizards involves doing math before you break out the rituals and chanting. In spite of the immense power of this wind, it's also the one least prevalent on the ground, since again, this is the lore of Up. If you want to feel the full might of Azir and get the most bang for your magical buck, you have to travel to the highest of mountaintops. Only there can you feel it in its full glory. Not to say it can't be properly deadly on the ground, of course. Dropping a rock on someone stops being a magical spell the moment you've dragged the rock over someone's head. At that point, it's just physics that's caving your skull in. Same with the lightning they cast. Them calling the lightning down is magical. You being electrocuted is perfectly mundane in nature. In spite of things being surprisingly scientific, when an Azir wizard takes to the field, you can feel the magic in the air.
I guess I kind of see how the science and magic relates. How he said they just summon the storm, I guess, but the storm does its thing, you know, it's like math related.
Lightning will arc around them and the atmosphere crackles with ozone as they seem to float across the battlefield, and indeed sometimes the very wind beneath their feet is magically lifting them off the ground. The Winds of Magic
So it can fly?
supplement for 4th edition fantasy roleplay, which for reference is where I'm getting a large amount of this video's information from if you'd like to check it out yourself, helpfully details traits an Azir wizard might have. I'll go over them for each lore. For Heavens, a wizard of this lore becomes almost unnaturally calm and tranquil. You're so goddamn relaxed that it affects initiative tests to yourself and those around you, but your eyes become a blue so piercing it unnerves those around you. This is fitting, of course, because you can also be randomly affected with visions of the future. Warhammer Fantasy having the word Warhammer in the title, these visions are rarely good. Your voice becomes whispery much like a breeze, and you can even become partially intangible. In fact, it's these traits, aside from the eyes, that lead people to think the Winds of Heaven is fairly easy to master. Those blue wizards are all chill as hell, surely it can't be that hard. That's not at all true, of course. Though all winds are demanding in what they need to master them, Heavens is in my estimation one of the more up there ones. Aside from needing to be good at math, which immediately discounts me from becoming one, the constant knowledge of the future is the kind of thing that weighs on you. That indeed is the true cost of mastery of the Wind of Azir. Celestial wizards, for instance, had knowledge of the end times and all the horrific nonsense that involved for centuries before it actually happened. We could barely handle it out of universe. How do you think they handled it in universe? So in summary, the lore of Heavens from day-to-day life is a fairly calm and relaxed lore, I'll admit. The most common thing it's used for is predicting storms and helping with the wind so sailors can safely travel. But when it's time to throw down or when fate seems to be coming to a head, the Wind of Heavens makes itself known in ways that are unmistakable. That cheery, if somewhat slow-seeming lady you've been hitting on will suddenly spring to life, and if you've been coming on a bit too hard, she's gonna drop a lightning-covered meteor directly on top of your house.
You know, maybe I was a bit too harsh on Celestial Magic in the first video I did. Maybe they're a lot cooler than I expected, honestly.
Light magic, also known as the White Wind or Heish, and for those of you into Age of Sigmar, also known as that place where those goddamn elves live, is ironically for light the hardest wind to detect. Mastering it being the hardest I can understand, it's light, but difficulty in seeing it is a bit of a surprise, in large part again because it's light. But apparently it's the hardest to see, although fair's fair, it does make a little bit of sense. If you look at the electromagnetic spectrum, all of that is technically a form of light. Humans, however, can't see the vast majority of it. It also tends to congregate in places that are already brightly lit in a mundane fashion, which is another logical, if silly, explanation. You can't see the light of Heish easily, because in order to look at it, you also need to look directly into the sun, which if you haven't noticed, is rather bright. To make up for this, the Wind of Heish is one of the farthest reaching ones, if not in how common it is, then in the places you can find it. Heish will seep into buildings, the ground, cave networks. Though it may not be found everywhere, it can be found anywhere. A Heish wizard may be surprised to find that the random chasm they're crossing on their journey is suffused with more light magic than anywhere else they've stopped thus far. Funnily enough, this information is given in a section right after it says that light wizards are the bane of librarians everywhere, because they usually have an acolyte traveling with them whose entire
Yeah, the acolyte who is always like is annoying everyone around him.
job is to chant non-stop. Indeed, the Wind of Heish is hard to control and requires all this chanting because of its nature. It is in many ways just as intangible as actual light is, and as a result, there is only really two kinds of people that can truly master it. You're either an incredibly willful person, or an incredibly humble person. You either wrangle light to yourself and tell it to sit down and listen, or you accept that you are but a student in a world full of mysteries and allow it to flow through you. These two types of people can withstand the full measure of Heish, and with it they can work nothing short of miracles. And the upside of all this effort is that while the magic is incredibly hard to control, it's also incredibly stable. Light magic users who are proficient at their craft are easily the least susceptible to corruption by chaos from a spell miscasting or something like that. Of
That's actually very convenient.
course, that does make me wonder if the road to mastery is paved with the skulls of people who couldn't quite handle it, but hey, throw enough people at a problem and eventually one will solve it. It's not like that attitude was exclusive to the Soviet Union. Light magic itself tends to fall into one of three different schools.
That's also a Skaven way.
Usage. The first is illumination, literally of course, but also metaphorically. I hope I don't have to explain to you how light is literally illuminating, but metaphorically it can also free your mind of doubt and lies. Heish is a logical light, bringing the truth to the forefront and banishing the darkness of doubt for your mind. Its very presence makes people think more analytically and critically, and when concentrated, Heish magic is, if nothing else, the ultimate tool for solving an escape room puzzle. Its second domain is that of a lore of healing, not physically, but mentally and spiritually. Heish spells mechanically have been used to increase leadership, and the magic as a whole is incredibly heartening to the allies of the caster. After all, what is there to fear after the darkness has been cast out? And the final domain is that of exorcism. Light is holy in all sorts of media, and while in Warhammer Fantasy it isn't strictly speaking holy, it sure as hell is good at banishing demons. An average light
Yeah, I remember that they can single-handedly banish like big demons.
wizard can usually banish lesser demons even if it'll require some effort. Against a powerful light wizard, even the mightiest of greater demons need to be wary. Above all things, light is a fairly ordered type of magic, something the demons of chaos aren't big fans of. That's part of why the background fluff of the Lumineth Realm Lords in Age of Sigmar is them burning away chaos corruption when they so much as show up. Light wizards tend to be fairly arrogant even amongst themselves, since by virtue of Heish being so hard to study and its usefulness against chaos, they naturally think highly of themselves. They may literally glow and cause light sources around them to glow brighter as well, and darkness itself may weaken them. The spells of the White Wind, meanwhile, are fairly varied. There is, of course, classic damaging spells, but also ones like the Net of Amintok, where solid strands of light bind themselves around someone to paralyze them. This doesn't
Ooh.
work on animals because it's apparently binding their intelligence or something, and bestial creatures are too stupid to stop and do math, but hey, it works, sometimes at least. It won't stop a beastman, but it'll stop a chaos warrior, so that's worth something. There's also Time Amok and Barona's Time Warp, both spells that increase the speed of those they're cast on by way of time itself bending to the light wizard's will. As an aside, this makes Enrico Pucci the ultimate light wizard.
Wait, so we can increase their speed? That's cool. Okay. Okay. My guys. shadow
From light,
magic.
we come to the opposite wind, the Grey Wind of Ulgu, shadow magic. As is fitting the name, the Wind of Ulgu often manifests amongst those who see it as a dark mist or fog spreading across the land. It's weakest on a bright sunny day and strongest when the clouds blot out the night sky. Much like death magic when we come to it though, don't mistake it for an inherently evil lore. Darkness is no more natural than light, and indeed Ulgu is no more or less evil than Hysh. Nevertheless, the idea of shadows and darkness are things that are uneasy to people, for you never really know what lurks in them. Indeed, when the winds of Ulgu blow strongly, many people attuned to it see dancing creatures just in the corner of their eyes inside this mist. And once again, as is fitting the magic of shadow, no one knows if these are real creatures of Ulgu, potentially something much more sinister like demons, or just the wind of shadow playing tricks on your
Nobody
eye.
knows.
As you may expect, shadow wizards are inherently distrusted. Even if they've done nothing wrong, the wind causes animals to be frightened around them, their eyes perturb people, and even the light itself seems to dim in their presence. Of course, the upside is that if you need someone to sneak into a building undetected, a shadow wizard is unmatched in this. Ulgu itself is such a tricky goddamn wind that there are 3 overlapping theories about the Skaven because of it. One is that the Skaven perform a great ritual every year using Ulgu to keep their existence a secret known only to very few. Others say that the ritual existing is itself a trick of Ulgu. And of course, because why would that be the end of things, there's the third layer of the rumor, that the entire existence of the Skaven is itself a trick by Ulgu. While Age of Sigmar, if nothing else, confirms that not to be true, it would be incredibly funny if an entire army was revealed to just be a fundamental aspect of reality gaslighting people into thinking man-sized rats exist. The lore of Shadow's many spells include things like clouding your opponent's mind with fear and doubt, as well as shrouding the physical landscape of the room you're in darkness. You can teleport through the shadows, you can create illusions with a surprising amount of tangibility, and because Warhammer sometimes gets confused with what the word subtlety means, there's also spells like the Pit of Shades, which drags you to some dark dimension for all eternity.
And tell me how that ain't fucking cool. That's cool. I love it.
Yeah, that's terrifying. No disrespect to shadow wizards, but surely they understand why the ability to do something like that might make people feel uneasy around you.
Oh, so short. Whatever. I can't. They're still cool. They're still the coolest mages. Death magic.
Death magic, also known as Shyish or Amethyst magic, is both the hardest one for people to see as well as the one people mistrust users of the most. And like shadow magic, it's fairly obvious to see why, and in fact it's even more so understandable. Shadow magic has much going for it about illusions, and while more will be discussed in a video about the colleges of magic, shadow wizards tend to not be the most sociable or honest of folk. Not malicious by any means or even necessarily lying to you, they're just the kind of person to awkwardly and quietly sit in the corner of a restaurant and look vaguely uncomfortable with life. They're hard to read and people find that an unsettling quality in a wizard. Death wizards, meanwhile, are called death wizards. They practice the lore of death and have power over the dead, as well as, naturally, exceptional power to make you dead, beyond just stabbing you or other mundane ways of killing someone.
Please do not do it.
Even compared to other wizards, this is disturbing, because at least with the fire wizard, for example, I understand why I'm dying. I got lit on fire. Death wizards wave their hands, and then a living creature just shuts down. Given that at least in the Empire, necromancy is also not only real, but a frequent threat depending on where you live, fearing the dude with the job title of Death Wizard is hardly something you can blame them for. Death magic itself is in some ways the most reliable form of magic when it comes to predicting where it will be. If you're a physically, magically, or even politically powerful enough person, it's even easy to cause a large amount of death magic to manifest in a place. Just start butchering people. The more dead people in an area, the more death magic there'll be. Death magic doesn't care for the specifics either way, so whether you empty out a town on your own or tell your death squad to do it for you, there will be concentrations of death magic before long. Even sufficiently decayed buildings can be strongly suffused with death magic, the decay and death of the town and culture that built it being enough to contract the wind. It'll often manifest not as a wind, but as, and I quote this next bit, dark purple fragments of corpse shrouds drifting on a slow-moving breeze in desultory, melancholy manner. If all this sounds a bit too wishy-washy and poetic for your liking, consider that it's magic, and if there's there's anything allowed to have a reason like that for being the way it is, it's magic. Of course it reads like depressed 8th grade poetry. What else would death magic be like? Death wizards themselves are often gaunt and sickly folk as a result of the magic that surrounds them. Finding out they're a death wizard might involve something like seeing the corpse of their comrades. Nothing inherently unusual for a soldier, except for the fact said corpse is sitting right next to their still living counterpart days before the battle happens. Their hands become cold and clammy, their voice is no more than a whisper, and they may even literally stink like rotten
Yeah, probably seen the stuff like that will fuck you up, honestly.
corpses.
I keep forgetting that they see the person and they see like their like dead counterpart next to them. That would mess me up.
Hell, they might accidentally cause people around them to age faster, which makes the fear of them a lot more understandable if I'm to be honest with you. Fearing a wizard for being a wizard is one thing. Fearing a wizard because he might induce early onset Alzheimer's on accident is a whole lot more understandable. It should, however, be reiterated, even after all that death magic is not inherently evil. It's grim, it can come about because of some real messed up stuff, but it isn't any more evil than death is as a concept in real life, even though it does cause death. Death wizards are not necromancers, even though they can interact with the dead, and indeed the Winds of Magic supplement mentions a tale of an amethyst wizard coming to assist some town guards in a murder investigation. As far as reliably identifying who committed a murder goes, I can think of few better ways than asking the guy who got murdered who did it to him. It always relates to death, but there's no reason death magic has to be used for evil. Fittingly, much of death magic
This is what I like. This is such a unique way of using the death magic. It's insane.
about killing people in ethereal ways, such as sucking their soul out of their body. However, there are some more interesting spells to be found. The Fate of Buna causes people to laugh so hard they might choke to death. They can be telepaths, which to be honest I don't understand why that's a spell for death wizards, but what do I know? I'm not a death wizard. Because it does have a lot to command the dead with, though not raise them, it can also be used to sanctify an area against the undead, making death mages adept at dealing with vampires and their ilk. It can cause objects and even people to age to dust in seconds, as Eltharion unfortunately found out, and at least on the tabletop in Total Warhammer, it can cast the Purple Sun of Xerius. This spell is a giant floating purple ball of death that more or less kills whatever it so much as glances at. In Total Warhammer, it can wipe out entire units, including your own if luck isn't on your side. And while I've not had the pleasure of seeing it in action on the tabletop, from what I've read, its main purpose there is to make the other player call you slurs for casting power word kill on their entire army at once. Death magic isn't inherently evil, nor are its users, but when they want to kill you, they can, and quite easily. There is also a spell called Amaranth. It helps to mitigate not only critical hit rolls against you, but the effects of disease and corruption. This is helpful as a spell because not being murdered or corrupted is always good, and it does tie into death magic not being inherently evil and having abilities that counteract the more evil sources of death in Warhammer. I only bring it up, however, because I hate the name. Oblivion's remaster has put me back on an Elder Scrolls lore binge, and now I have Michael Kirkbride's insane writing stuck in my head. The dream no longer needs its dreamer, and now you can cast that as a spell in Warhammer. So you know what? Here's an idea for any ambitious DMs of a future Warhammer fantasy roleplay campaign. Have your players meet up with a death wizard, hype up the character with all the stereotypes about death magic you can think of, and then when they finally meet the wizard, have them cast fucking Chim on one of your players. Everyone thinks they're gonna meet the spooky death mage, and then explain to one of them that they can either see how the wheel forms an eye, or zero sum and they have to make a new character now. And then throw a Pelennal White Strake at them if they're playing an elf. All this doom and gloom for the last two magic types has been a bit much, and now I need to clear my head of Vivek's sermon.
Yeah.
So how about we switch to something much simpler? Fire, the Red Wind of Akshi. This alongside Celestial magic is probably the most familiar one to people, both because of Sienna in the Vermintide games and because it's fire magic. If you've ever seen Avatar: The Last Airbender, you know the basics of
That show is so good, and simply goated.
fire magic. Sometimes things aren't more than meets the eye. Fire magic is predictably most active in places of intense heat. Even in something as mundane as a desert at noon, this can result in stronger than normal fireballs, even if I don't think fantasy roleplay gets that mechanically in depth. If you're near something like a bonfire, however, even that's enough to get a significant power boost. If an entire town has been set ablaze around you, or for some reason or other you've decided standing near an active volcano is a good idea, you can safely say goodbye to whatever you point your finger at. In those circumstances, you are no longer playing a Warhammer fantasy roleplay.
I think for me personally, like fire magic is, it feels like I can understand it. It's like the most straightforward one. It's like it's simple to understand. They can cast Fireball.
character. You are now playing Colonel Roy Mustang. Everything about this lore is, truth be told, something you could guess from basic understanding of tropes, but hey, it's Warhammer flavor generic stuff, so it's still fun to talk about. Aside from swirling around roaring infernos, the wind is attracted to people that are particularly impulsive and, dare I say, hot-headed. Their very presence makes flames grow hotter. The wind inflames their tempers to the point they'll snap at almost anything, and while they become more resistant to flame-based attacks, they aren't, strictly speaking, immune. Fire wizards can still be burned alive, oftentimes at the hands of their own flames, and they, of course,
That's kind of sad. Imagine you're on the battlefield, you become like angry, and you, instead of like helping you, you burn yourself.
they're not immune to the consequences of whatever they burn down. Sienna is wanted in the Tylean city of Miragliano because she might have accidentally burned down about half of it when collecting a debt.
Whoopsie!
A good portion of the lore of fire spells are predictably lighting things on fire, throwing a burning skull at people, causing a fire tornado, enchanting weapons so that they're wreathed in flames. If nothing else, a fire wizard is going to be great for dealing with trolls. There's also some, if not as bright, then just as devastating and quite frankly insidious spells that make even death magic seem downright tame, because at least death magic is predictably grim. With Akshi, you can ignite someone's temper so that they cannot help but to start beating the shit out of someone in particular, which is a form of mind control if you think about it. You can also boil blood while it's still in someone's body.
That is messed up. Holy fuck, that's scary.
So, yeah, this is a generic win, but that doesn't mean what you can do with it isn't terrifying. If anything, a creative fire mage is one of the most terrifying opponents you can face. You can conceivably block against their fire, but I don't think there's a type of armor in existence that prevents your blood from being boiled in your veins.
Honestly, the last thing, this is something new I learned about them, and holy shit, that's scary. Goddamn, now fire magic is also pretty cool. Okay, beast magic.
I can't play it because I don't want to commit suicide by copyright lawyer, but please imagine that Hungary Like the Wolf is playing as the song background for right now. Amber magic, also known as Gur, the Wind of Beasts, is a predictably wild and savage lore. It's oftentimes called the Brown Wind, and many of its hues are different shades of brown that only those truly in touch with their wild side can differentiate between. This is something those who frequently deal with hangover shits will be intimately familiar with. Amber magic is found where people generally aren't. Vast forests, be they nice and calm like the Shire or filled with beastmen and worse, are where amber magic can be found. It's in untouched streams, canyons and cliffs, places where civilization has yet to ruin the pristine beauty of. It can even be found swirling around high enough concentrations of wild animals or particularly powerful apex predators, which can in turn supply an amber mage with a boost of magic to use. Gur will cause people to become more in touch with their wild side, as is predictable for this lore, although that entails more than what you might just think. For example, the obvious things this grants are the ability to control wild animals and even make friends with all the cute little forest critters. On the other hand,
We're like Disney princess.
and amber wizards are not only recluses that generally avoid civilization, but spend most of their time in the wilds being supported and propped up by a magic that isn't too fond of civilized creature comforts. That is to say, some of the effects of amber magic are becoming a hairy, smelly, long-finger-nailed caveman-looking dude. You also can't really sleep well in cities, and you may or may not be claustrophobic, but only when inside man-made buildings. When this lore says it's all about nature, it means it. The spells you can cast with this lore, meanwhile, are all themed around savage nature, but in that they are varied. One, for example, is just growing a coat of fur so that you're immune to the cold. It looks gross.
Listen, even if it sounds a bit like stupid, I think that's very convenient.
It's not the kind of trick you'd use to impress party guests, but if you need to travel across Kislev, it's great, and it can even help deflect critical strikes. Another spell is throwing a spear made of pure beast magic, which is pure magic and so naturally deadly, in addition to being a spear, which is also naturally deadly. You can magically track a scent and even smell corruption, and for the ultimate spell, you can turn into a great beast. This includes, but is not limited to, hydras, griffins, and dragons. And if nothing else, you can always just summon a pack of wolves. For most situations you find yourself in during an average fantasy roleplay session, sicking a dozen wolves on something is a great way to get out of that situation.
Okay. I think in this video he's going a little bit deeper than in the last one I saw. Beastmen are also cool, like, goddamn, they're also cool. Now I start to understand there was a comment that said you should go deeper into each school of magic and only later choose what is your favorite, because I see it now. The comment was right. Life magic.
Our second to last lore of magic is the Green Wind Gyrin, the lore of life. Life magic is similar to Hysh in that it's quite effective at dealing with chaos, as exemplified best with the Everqueen of the High Elves. Hers is strong enough that she can get into a tug-of-war with Slaanesh over someone's soul, but even your average life wizard can help out plenty when it comes to dealing with demons. Life magic naturally congregates where there's a massive amount of living things. This is most prominent in natural areas untouched by civilization, similar to Gur, but unlike Gur, it isn't outright stifled by civilized areas. I imagine that it's more a case of natural areas just having more life than cities. After all, trees, grass, insects, and more are all life. Verdant farmland, for instance, is also going to be a hotspot of Gyrin, where something like that is inherently unwild and therefore won't have much beast magic flowing around it. Life magic also tends to gather in large enough bodies of water. A simple stream isn't really going to help you out, but rivers, lakes, oceans, all those things are teeming with life and life magic alike. Inversely,
but if I remember, though they're like similar with beast magic, they don't really like each other.
Deserts are barren of life magic, much like they're barren of life. In real life, I imagine there'd still be some small amount of life magic, since deserts aren't completely lifeless, but in Warhammer fashion, a desert is usually a completely empty shithole, aside from the living dead.
Oh my god, he didn't need to go so hard.
Count. A Jade Wizard is tied with a Metal Wizard for the most widespread level of acceptance, and in particular, farming communities absolutely love them. Yes, it's true that they're still foul wizards, but on the other hand, they can guarantee you're gonna get the best harvest you've ever seen. Given that most average people in Warhammer Fantasy are likely farmers, this is the single best boon you can give to someone. As a result of—
Dude, I imagine you're a farmer, you just see the life wizard and you're like, hell yeah. Hell yeah, my crops are gonna be good this year.
Being inundated with Jade magic, the wizards become much more in tune with nature, similar to Gur again, but more in the hippie kind of way. Plant and animal life around them will become healthier and grow quicker, though this may have the side effect of food perishing faster as well. Their skin becomes green like a plant, they smell like moss, and in the winter they actually weaken as the lush life of spring gives way to the harsh winter chill.
Oh.
Also,
but we're probably like in their prime, I guess, somewhere around spring, I guess.
There's only so many ways to put this, but you might be getting a magically mandated foot fetish. Druids, as these wizards are usually called, tend to not wear shoes as disrupts the flow of Gyrin into them.
Dude, they also have like Peledas on their shoulders. Look at him. Look at him. Beautiful.
Do with this information what you will. The Green Wind appears as one of the most brilliant winds of all when it waxes strong, shining almost like a wall of beautiful emerald light. The spells, meanwhile, are fairly varied, and despite being the hippie lore, have a surprising amount of usages in warfare and active combat. As the Wood Elf Queen Ariel shows, strangling your enemy to death with vines and tree roots can be a great final word in any argument. And you can harden your skin like bark to be highly resistant to attacks. But even beyond that, the lore of life is the ultimate utility lore, even if only in a lot of mundane senses. You can cast spells to completely hide your tracks behind you as nature reverts to how it was before your army trampled through it.
Ooh, that's kind of cool.
Said army with endless food from the land. And of course, regenerating someone who's taken a beastman's axe to the sternum means you can keep fighting well beyond what other magical lores would allow you to. People really do sleep on the lore of life in universe. Out of universe, however, I understand it used to be incredibly broken due to the spell lore's passive. Goes to show that Warhammer would be a different place if tabletop nerds ran its armies.
You know, even after this, I still think that, unfortunately for me, life magic is probably the least favorite one, but I think in a sense, it's like, as Pancreas said, it's very utility-wise. I think its utility that it brings is crazy, but me personally, it's not for me. Metal magic, hell yeah, the rich guys.
And for the last lore, we have the funny school, the Wind of Metal, Shamon, the Golden Wind. It's
Yeah.
funny because Balthasar Gelt is here, throwing rocks at people and stealing their wallets to pay for taxi rides. As we all damn well know, the lore of metal is supreme like Gelt. Riches, power, and more can be yours with just a flick of a wrist and an abandonment of your morals. This is dipping more into the colleges of magic than the lore itself, but it's important to know that lore of heavens mages are the kind of scientists who would be working for the church in the 1500s. Still looking to advance human knowledge, but with a philosophical and theological bent. Lore of metal mages, meanwhile, advance the kind of science that Lockheed Martin is a really big fan of. Yes, seeing the future is nice and all, but how are we expected to survive it if I can't perfect this new gunpowder formula? And while I'm at it, why don't I strap an extra few barrels to this gun and see what happens when I enhance the gunpowder in it with magic? After all, one of the assistants is going to be the one firing it. If he blows up, that's just what has to be done in the name of progress. Golden wizards are the other type of wizard most liked by the common man, and as life wizards are loved by rural folk, so too are metal wizards loved by city dwellers. Fixing and enhancing a structure's beam so it doesn't collapse is something anyone living in an apartment or walking across a bridge can appreciate. And gold wizards being equal parts material scientist and wizard, they've produced as many mundane modern wonders as they have magical ones. Most often in the fields of weapons, granted, but this is a Warhammer setting, so that's a frequently used kind of improvement. Someone who's had to face down a beastman horde is going to appreciate a Shamon mage's latest batch of improved gunpowder or enchanted swords. The gold wind itself can take the form of either a literal golden wind washing the world with bright metallic color, or as flecks of gold dusting the world as it breezes across the land. As you've no doubt guessed, the lore of metal is attracted to metal. Sorry for hitting you with the deep and complex lore all at once like that. This can range from natural metals like veins in a mountain to formations of soldiers clad
Dude, look at this fucking image. Holy Vaura.
heavy armor. Rusted or brand new, the lore of metal surrounds these things like a hawk. And it genuinely is any metal. Something I've not touched too much upon is that the winds of magic, even when they're weak, can still be found circling things that relate to a particular wind. Having zero winds of magic in an area is damn near impossible, and so even when things are weak, you can usually still find something. In this case, even an army of dwarfs who naturally dampen magic with their presence will still have the faintest glimmer of Shamon circling around them. As with all winds, metal can change its user, in this case turning them into a living statue to some extent. Golden wizards may cry tears that look like pure mercury, their joints can stiffen, and their very voice can take on a metallic tinge. It lends some credence to Balthasar Gelt's voice not being the echo of his mask, but rather just how he sounds after his accident. On the other hand, they gain affinity with metal, and as a result of becoming more metallic due to the wind, they can even no-sell lightly damaging attacks made with traditional weaponry. As for the spells, they're somewhat predictable, but with a few twists. The most obvious ones are things like hardening and softening weapons and armor, rusting it so that it decays away, and enchanting it so that they can pierce any armor or weather any strike. Turning someone into a solid metal statue is also on the table, which is both an effective way to win a fight and a horrifying fate to suffer from. It can also be used for more creative things, however. You can lighten the density of an armor, for instance, making it easier to move in, and if I had to hazard a guess, making it actually possible to
They literally got everything.
while wearing plate mail. You can learn the properties of any object you touch, and the spell that allows that even allows you to check up on the health of a creature if used on a living being. Surprisingly helpful for dealing with Nurgle. You can also turn metals temporarily into real gold. This can be done for real, but that's much more
That's way more funny to do for scamming.
dangerous and generally frowned upon by the colleges of magic. Fake gold, meanwhile, is for all intents and purposes real gold until the spell wears off, at which point you will ideally be a good distance away from whatever poor sucker you just scammed. If you think that's not a long-term way to handle monetary issues, consider that that's how Balthasar Gelt got to Altdorf, and he's currently the supreme patriarch of the colleges of magic. He does still have the resulting bounty on his head, but good luck to anyone trying to claim it. It also means that if you're a gambling addict, being a gold wizard is the best thing ever. Find random metal scrap, turn it into gold for a few hours, and then flee to the next town over before it wears off. If you win, you've won real money. If you lose, it was just random crap off the ground that you've lost. Ruin Sterling's economy for a laugh. Those morons wouldn't know that a wizard made fake gold if you told them that's what happened. As a
This prick stabbed him in the back.
side note, a gold wizard could spell the end of Warhammer 40k if one somehow got transported there. The spell that lets you learn the properties of an object and if someone is healthy or not is known as Breach the Unknown. It can also be used to discover any magical properties an item has as well. Now picture this scenario. Balthasar Gelt is magically transported to Warhammer 40k and comes across a group of Necrons. Being made of metal, living metal or not, he can quite easily force them to obey his will. By casting Breach the Unknown, Balthasar Sargelt now knows what is in living metal and how to make it. He knows how to make Necron Gauss weaponry. He knows the secrets of reanimation protocol. Balthasar Gelt can now make his way to the nearest forge or hive world, commandeer its industries, and begin producing an endless stream of Necron warriors under his control. Failing that, he
I did not. I just blinked and holy.
recreate any Dark Age of Technology artifact that he finds. You might ask, what if the Mechanicus tries to stop him? And to that, I have to ask you this. What do you think the people who've replaced most of their bodies with metal are going to do to stop the man who has complete control over metal? Don't sleep on gold magic, ladies and gentlemen. If Warhammer Fantasy wasn't
He just made Gelt be 100 times cooler than he already is.
set in the Renaissance, gold wizards could rule the world with an army of fully functional 3D printed tanks that could magically pierce any armor they had to face. Alternatively, a user of the Golden Wind could become the greatest mafioso known to mankind. For a brief foray into Age of Sigmar, the winds of magic are the same, but different there. All 8 of them do still exist, but now they make up reality instead of flowing into it. The 8 different mortal realms are all formed out of one of the winds as they coalesced after the end times.
Yeah.
And naturally, this has caused the reality mortals live in to be based around which wind makes up their particular corner of the universe. TLDR, so that we aren't here too long, the wind of magic that makes up a given realm will be most prevalent and be what that reality is based on, but others are always present. In the realm of fire, there'll be a lot of deserts and volcanoes, but life magic will still work there and can be cast. As you get closer to the edges of a realm, things become more extreme. Using the realm of fire again, there will eventually just be a sea of magical lava and fire everywhere. Not ideal for life. A given realm also naturally enhances the power of spells of the same wind of magic as that realm. A metal wizard will always be able to feel connected to Shamon, and can always cast spells of the lore of metal. If they're in 7 of the 8 mortal realms, things will go as normal. If they cast something like Breach the Unknown in the realm of metal, however, they might instead learn the properties of everything in a 3-mile radius. Or to make things even simpler, fire wizards. In most realms, casting fire just results in a fireball. If you cast it in the realm of Akshi, then casting fireball is actually casting atomic bomb. And those are the major winds of magic in Warhammer Fantasy. There are several more lores, but to keep things concise, those are the main 8, and all lores of magic do come from these 8 winds. If you want to play a wizard, pick a lore and get casting. What's the risk of a demon incursion compared to the benefit of plucking someone's soul out of their body, or gambling with money that's not actually real and getting away with it? Thank you as always to my wonderful channel members. You are the winds of...
I'll skip to the ending meme, guys.
Personally, I would be a celestial wizard if I was able to choose which one to be good at, but not for scientific or philosophical reasons. Even though, like I said, I'm garbage at math, I only need to get one single prophecy right, and that is the winning numbers to the next mega lottery. After that, everything else is irrelevant. I'd have magicked my way into winning hundreds of millions of dollars. I now have everything I need, and even in the scenario where society just crumbles around me or anything, so what? I can just electrocute or drop comets on the heads of any Mad Max gangs that try and take my stuff. Easy win right there.
I agree. As always, PancreasNoWork, thank you for your video. Very informative. To the person who recommended, also thank you. I really enjoyed this video, though unfortunately, as you guys maybe noticed, I haven't been commenting a lot this video because, well, personally, sometimes I just need time to process everything. So yeah, I think this video was a very weak reaction from me. It was more like of a watch along with me, I guess. I still don't think I would change anything. I still think Shadow Wizards are my favorite. They're the coolest. However, on the second place would be probably the Metal Mages. And on the third, I would probably put the Beast Mages. I kind of like them. They're cool. Yeah, I don't want to make this video longer than it is, so guys, girls, if you want to see more of other reactions, please leave them down in the comments, and I'll add them to my request playlist, and I'll somewhere down the line in the future I'll watch the videos. If you enjoyed my reaction, please leave a like. See you in the next one. Ciao, cacao, bye.